There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Please be seated. The Secretary will read the order.
Debate on vote number 14, Basic Education Appropriation Bill.
We call upon the Honorable Minister of Basic Education.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let me acknowledge my cabinet colleagues that are here, MECs from provinces that have joined us, honorable members, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Chair, thank you again for the opportunity for the 2019-20 debate on Vote 14, Basic Education, which is delivered and debated in the context of what His Excellency, President Ramaphosa, said during the State of the Nation address last month when he said, I quote, "As South Africa enters the next 25 years of democracy and in pursuit of the objectives of the National Development Plan, we must proclaim a bold and ambitious goal, a unifying purpose to which we dedicate our resources and energies. So as we enter the last decade of the NDP Vision 2030, we must define South Africa we want more clearly and agreed on the concrete actions we need to undertake as a nation. As we are building the future, yes, the new dawn of South Africa, we do recommit to building a solid foundation for a quality of efficient basic education system from the early childhood development, ECD, to further education and training band, and to contribute to the 7 cardinal principles of the 6th administration, especially in relation to consolidating development. Speaker, I must state up front that basic education has progressed quite admirably over the past 25 years of our democratic dispensation. It is no mistake that His Excellency, President Ramaphosa, attributed the sector's progress to a silent revolution. We, however, are the first to concede that our achievements are accompanied by stubborn systemic challenges that we continue to grapple with, and therefore wish to encourage the House to read our annual reports, because won't be able to go through the processes of what the challenges are and what the achievements are. But I was heartened by the measure put forward by His Excellency President Ramaphosa on the June 2019 State of the Nation address to put the country back on track as far as economic growth is concerned. And this will ease the pressure on the education sector and create a better environment for educational improvements, which, as we should all know, is a prerequisite for a healthy economy and society, and for our ongoing task of tackling the legacy of deep inequality in South Africa. Speaker, let me upfront just highlight the following in relation to Budget 14 of Basic Education for 2019. The overall 2019-2020 MTF budget allocation for DBE is 24.5 billion, which is an increase of 3.4% from the overall allocation which was made last year. The overall allocation for conditional grants, which is money that goes to provinces, is 18.6 billion, which is an increase of 4.9 million from last year's budget. Speaker, I also want to thank Treasury that this year, for the first time, we're going to get an allocation of 59.5 million for the period 2019 MTF through the general support allocation for a new project planned called the Systemic Improvement of Language and Numeracy in the Foundation Phase. And the first tranche of 26.8 million will be available in the 2019-2020 budget. We are also grateful for an additional allocation of 60 million for another new project funded through the general support allocation called Technology for Grade 7 to 9, and the first tranche of 20.5 million is available for this year. So the overall allocation for 2019-2020, earmarked for transfers, which will be going to different agencies, is 2.8 billion, which is 3.7% up. I also want Speaker to make an important note about the budget, the 2019-2020 MTF budget. For instance, DBE programs such as administration, teacher education, human resources, and institutional development, curriculum support and monitoring and educational achievements are covered. And I thought I should do this, Speaker, because half the time we present budgets, people ask, you didn't say anything about AIDS. So I thought I should just list all the programs that are going to be covered by the budget. For instance, on conditional grants, which are going to go or are spent in provinces, these include mathematical science, technology, infrastructure delivery, HIV and AIDS, school nutrition, and also a program for learners with severe, profound intellectual disabilities, for rural education, and also for the 2 new projects that I've just mentioned. And there are also earmarked funds which include Umalusi, our collaboration with the NECT, SAYS, the Second Chance Program, workbooks, early grade reading, as well as information and communication technologies. At the outset, Chair and honorable members, I must state that the 2019 ANC election manifesto does enjoin us to prioritize education and skills development. So as we work towards universalization to early childhood development programs and improving the quality of education, we are directed, as I say, by your SDG 4s, your UNESCO program, but also by the AU program. We have translated all these policy commitments into our education plan. And through that, we have detailed or have identified 11 strategic areas that we'll be focusing on. Priority number 1 is going to be improving the foundational skills of literacy and numeracy, especially reading and meaning, straddling the ECD to end in the intermediate phase, which should underpin what we want to have as a reading revolution. Priority number 2 will be the immediate implementation of a curriculum with skills and competencies for a changing world, the 4th industrial revolution, ICT rollout, as well as introduction of entrepreneurship, especially focused schools. And priority number 3 is a collaboration with the Department of Higher Education and Training to equip teachers with skills and knowledge to teach literacy and numeracy, in particular reading, and promote the status of to teach learners skills and competencies for a changing world. Priority number 4 is dealing decisively with the quality and efficiency of the education system and introducing multiple qualifications such as the GEC certificate. Those my age will know that is the old Form 3 that we say we also want to begin to pilot an exit certificate before grade 12. Eliminate the digital divide by ensuring that within 6 years of all schools, all our education offices have access to internet and free data, and urgently implement the 2-year ECD program that we have been talking about. Priority number 7 on decolonization of education, amongst others, and many other programs, will be the promotion of African languages, the promotion of history, of African history and national symbols to all learners up to grade 12. And priority number 8 will be really cooperating with sister departments like SAPS, the Department of Health and Sports and Culture, to address issues about school safety, health, social cohesion, to make sure that indeed that our schools become safety places for our learners and teachers. And priority number 9 is to integrate our infrastructure program, and 10 is to increase the safety net through pro-poor policies that we already have on ECD and learners with educational special needs. And priority number 11 will be to strengthen partnership with all stakeholders, because indeed we believe that education is, or it takes a village to raise a child, and education is a societal issue. So let me quickly speak to all the different priorities, Chair, which I've mentioned on improving the foundational skills of literacy and numeracy, especially reading with meaning, straddling the ECD to the end of the intermediate phase at grade 6, which will be underpinned by a reading revolution. Chair, I can report that we have made a lot of progress in giving our children access to schooling, ensuring that more children go on to complete matric and enter post-school opportunities. But we know that the only way we are going to see further improvements in these indicators is by improving the learning foundations that children build in the early grades of primary schooling. Although there are various factors affecting high school children that may trigger dropping out of school, the evidence shows that one of the root causes are poor and inadequate learning foundations. And therefore, we're working very hard with the Department of Social Development and all other relevant departments to make sure that we can ramp up the system from the bottom through an emphasis on ECD and your foundation phase. His Excellency has also set us a goal that every child should learn to read with meaning at the age of 10. And the coordination of our reading intervention is currently being strengthened, and we are paying particular attention to the teaching of reading with meaning. Hence, we have a new allocation this term which will enable us to implement this program. As DBE, we're implementing the Primary School Reading Improvement Program, which has already yielded results, and through this fund, we'll be strengthening the work that we've done in this area. We are collaborating with other partners outside the department to indeed make sure that as South Africans, we can promote reading in our homes, in our communities, and we're entrenching the Read to Lead campaign with the National Reading Coalition, which we launched this year in February, and we're also supplementing the technical work we're doing to support and improve instructions and learning through curriculum materials, instructions, and assessment. We've done a lot of work also to support the teaching and learning of mathematics in the early grades, because it's been one of the areas where we have been continuously experiencing poor progress. So last year, we launched a new framework for teaching mathematics with understanding, which will help teachers to better implement the curriculum. And we are currently piloting the implementation of this framework, and we'll be expanding it. Honorable members, we also wish to report that the National Institute for Curriculum and Professional Development will be fully institutionalized within this 2019 MTSF, strengthening teacher development in the sector and improving teachers' capacity to teach reading in the foundation phase and intermediate phase. We will have strong links with the curriculum delivery to professional development of educators through the Institute. Immediately, we also are looking, Speaker, at ensuring that we make progress in the areas of the three streams curriculum, namely academic, technical, vocational, and technical occupational streams. And we are convinced that the rollout of the three-stream curriculum model was definitely a step in the right direction, which resulted that already in 2018, learners set for a cluster of 3 technologies, namely civil technology, comprising civil service, construction, and woodworking. The mechanical technology comprising automotive fitting as well as machining. And thirdly, the class of 20, and the third one was electronic digital systems and power systems. So in addition to the class of 2018, more subjects were written, because we know that, and we have been part of international discussions, and this is confirmed by the research from the University of Oxford, which reveals that 45% of current jobs will disappear within the next 20 years, with many jobs becoming completely automated. So UNESCO's estimation is even higher than Oxford. They say 65% of the current jobs will not exist in the next 15 to 20 years. Therefore, the need for basic education sector to refocus the curriculum towards a competency-based approach, integrating the 21st century skills and competencies across all subjects, and the introduction of new subjects and programs that are responsive to the demands of the changing world is inescapable. We are working with the Department of Higher Education and Training, and we have begun to explore the streamlining of the qualifications and possibilities of using the General Occupational Certificate, which has been developed by Quality Council and Trade Occupations. We have also begun the process of transforming our curriculum by introducing new and existing skills-based subjects. And the plan is to establish national schools of specialization or focal schools incrementally throughout the country in the medium to long term to offer new and other skills-based subjects which include, amongst others, aviation, maritime studies, engineering, hospitality, and tourism, arts, as well as mathematics and science. We are also incrementally establishing technical high schools and schools of skills in line with the economic development zones, and the aim is to ultimately have at least one school per circuit. Honorable members, honorable members, as we enter the first year of the sixth administration, we can say with conviction that we have brought information and communication technologies and connectivity within the reach of our teachers and learners. We have digitized workbooks. We also have digitized some of the textbooks. We have developed we have developed grade R coding and robotics curriculum, and the design of the grade 4 to 9 curriculum is at an advanced stage, and we'll be piloting this curriculum from January 2020 in grades 3, R to 3, and grade 7. So to expand broadband and connectivity to schools for learners with special needs, we, in collaboration with the Department of Communication and the Independent Communication Authority, ICASA, will be providing 100 of the 453 special schools with ICT infrastructure and connectivity. And the ICT solutions will be determined by the categories of the disabilities in each school. We are empowered to analyze and interpret data effectively and accurately. We've been working on improving our South African school management and administrative system, and also our learner record information tracking system, which provides information around learners. We're therefore ready to tackle the fourth industrial revolution. On dealing decisively with quality and efficiency, the NDP says we should aim at world-class assessment involving reliable measures of learning for every primary school, and we will conduct estimative evaluation at strategic grades by finalizing preparations for technical standards for the administration of this standardized assessment to enable national and provincial monitoring of learning outcomes. And this assessment is currently being piloted in 2019, and the first cycle will be in 2020 for grade 3, 6, and 9. Chair, I can see I'm under pressure of time. So, Chair, in order to eliminate the digital divide by ensuring that within 6 years, all schools and education offices have access to internet and free data, the basic education sector views access to learning, to quality learning and teaching support as critical for meaningful classroom engagement and improvement in learning performance. Hence, the sector has worked very hard or extremely hard over the years to develop and digitize state-owned workbooks and readers. On decolonization of education, amongst others, I've mentioned that we're working hard to promote African languages, South African history, and national symbols. The ministerial task team on history, which has been reappointed, has commenced the writing of a revised history curriculum based on the report developed by the MTT and submitted to the minister a year ago. And we will be also going out to engage more South Africans around this subject, because we think we need, or it's going to be important to have an ownership of that curriculum by engaging a number of people. On teaching and promoting African languages, indeed, lots of work has taken place. Chair. Almost 80% of our schools that were supposed to implement the teaching of African languages have already done so. We're assisting the 20%, which has met challenges in doing that. But it's also important, Chair, I thought I should raise that it is important to stress that the issues of language is an emotive issue. All South African languages are protected by our Constitution. We therefore implore all South Africans to respect all languages and avoid public space that could raise the air of those affected by such public space. They are necessary because the Constitution covers what the language policy is, and where we have difficulties, we've owned up why we're unable to implement or to develop certain, especially African languages, to the level that they can be subjects of teaching. So there is a growing body of current research on African languages that confirms that the orthographies and linguistic structures of African languages are unique and are very different from the English language. As a result, we have conceptualized reading methodologies that speak to African languages, and therefore the language issue is very key because it does impact on reading and literacy outcomes. So I'm also delighted to announce, Chair, that as CM, we've agreed on the teaching of Kiswahili, and Kenya and Tanzania are helping us. And we also want to report that we have revised our model, or we're revising our delivery model for infrastructure to make sure that we can improve. And we are also working very hard with the sector to make sure that the programs of ECD and with learners of special needs where we have received new funding are also strengthened. So I want to conclude, because I can see I'm left with 2 minutes, to thank His Excellency who has
Honourable
outlined the
Minister.
directions.
Thank you very much.
Oh. Okay. I'll complete in my remaining 5 minutes.
Honourable Mpengo Kirikaba, you're welcome.
House Chair, the Minister of Basic Education, the Deputy Minister, the Director General and the senior officials of the department, members of the Portfolio Committee. Chair, I must say one is honored today for being afforded the opportunity to address our nation in this important budget vote of the Department of Basic Education. This is a serious platform of responsibility that should give hope to over 12 million learners, 400,000 teachers, and many other young children in the various education spaces of our country. I stand before you aware of the momentous times that we are traversing. Our approach to education derives its inspiration from the Freedom Charter. The Charter says, the aim of education shall be to teach the youth to love their people and their culture. They honor human brotherhood, liberty, and peace. Education shall be free, compulsory, universal, and equal for all children. These are some of the values our education system is structured to impart to our nation. The ANC manifesto calls for everyone to be part, growing South Africa together. Education is not spread. Education is expected to respond to the demands of growing South Africa. In that score, the ANC manifesto impresses that government must open the doors of learning to all by focusing on quality and innovation. We will equip young South Africans to the world of tomorrow. Chairperson, this call by the ANC is very clear. It yearns for a proper preparation of our citizenry, a citizenry that will not be rendered redundant in its own country, a citizenry that is not left behind in the changing world, but is equipped to participate in the mainstream economy and the emancipation of its life. This is where we are as we debate the vote 14 allocation of 24.5 billion to education of this country, a budget that should be central in the quest for skilling our nation properly. However, the above expectation of skilling our nation puts our education system at a crossroad. The choice to do things the same old way does not exist anymore. However, ours would be a three-pronged approach, which definitely will be unique and would need us to be smart, efficient, and effective with our hard-earned allocation resources. There is no time for wastages and neither time for delays and mistakes. When receiving the presentation on the APP and when analyzing the SONA and going through the Portfolio Committee on Basic Education Legacy Report, one notes that this budget must be spread in three approaches of delivery. The budget must consolidate the gains, it must continue to address the persistent challenges, and it must set a foundation of charting a new strategic direction of the department in order to respond to the demand of the skills revolution. Chair, this is the system that, while we agree that is not on the upward trajectory since the dawn of our democracy, it, however, on the one hand, is a system that still has to address some realities and persistent challenges. The same budget, on the other hand, has to chart a new direction of skilling our nation. This means that the new direction will have to embed it within the nucleus of growth of the system and within the existing host of realities and challenges. The trajectory of our education system has been well documented and has been open for all of us to see. Its successes were clear to everyone and the challenges were not hidden either. Indeed, this budget could not have come at a better time. A better time where 2 days from now, this budget vote coincides with the July month, the month in which the July 18th was dedicated by the United Nations back in 2009 to be the Nelson Mandela Day, a day in which the souls of all humanity are challenged to make the world a better place. A better time where we have an education system with the most stable curriculum. A budget could not have come at a better time where access in the preschooling and primary schooling have improved dramatically. These are the good times where primary school's completion has increased to over 95%. Good times indeed, because all children are entering the school system within their age. We have a system that cares for the well-being of its learners by feeding 9.7 million learners out of 12 million in the system. We need to celebrate that 9 out of 10 schools are no-fee schools. The 2017 Monitoring School Survey concludes that at a national level, learners' access to the libraries increased significantly from 45% in 2011 to 62% in 2017. The number of vacant posts has decreased significantly since 2011. Chair, the national average for field teaching posts, primary and secondary school combined, increased from 69% to 78% since the 2011 survey. The survey further notes that approximately 9% of learners across all quintiles have access to their own workbooks in both the home language and mathematics. Honorable Chair, that is the delivery that we can attest to. This is the work we need to continue doing within this budget so that the gains of our democracy can be consolidated. We need to celebrate these gains. The progressive move of ECD is welcomed. This will indeed expand access and thereby improve quality of ECD program. Ours is to request thorough planning and intense engagement amongst the affected departments and stakeholders so that we cover all the necessary tracks and scope of work to avoid derailment and contestation. Our children must be able to read with meaning. We believe the department, when they inform the portfolio committee that using the early grade assessment toolkit, they will work to improve the reading proficiency levels in the foundation phase in all underperforming rural and township schools. The allocation of the 1.9 billion for the curriculum policy, supporting and monitoring program allocated in this program may go a long way in monitoring the implementation of the reading norms and early grade reading assessment. However, Chair, during the presentation of the department, we noted that the target set for monitoring the implementation of the reading norms was only 20 schools, increasing to 40 in the medium-term targets. And we feel that these may need to be revised. While we are happy that the reading call has been included in the education sector priorities, let us also bear in mind that it has been the presidential call and that of other international studies, thereby elevating it for the greater attention. We also need to get engaged to address the teachers' absenteeism challenge, which is at 10% on average per day. What is worrying is that the school monitoring survey, as released recently, indicates that the problem increased from 8% to 10%. The reading is that it seems that the situation may not be at the alarming rate yet, but this is a matter that needs urgent attention. Intense monitoring is required and targeted support may have to be solicited. When we read the legacy report of the previous committee, we noted that there were instances where teachers have been staying at home for 6 years while learning remaining with no teachers. It was recorded that some of the provinces were battling with the cases to the detriment of the quality of teaching and learning when dealing with this matter. We need to accept that this is a matter that is also teaching us other weaknesses in the same system. The teachers' absenteeism challenge may be giving us a signal of a lack of effective supervision at schools, poor management of institutional time, lack of local community interest in the school system, and lack of appropriate and timely sanctions to the behavior. Curriculum coverage is one of the matter to keep an eye on. Various figures have been pitched and at the same time contested on the level of curriculum coverage in South African schools. What we know is that our country has high access rate with many learners attending schools and spending more time at school. The challenge to the department is that curriculum coverage monitoring should be one area of devoted attention if we want to have full grip of what is happening in the classroom. We may blame this to all sorts of problems, but we, at the end of it all, have to monitor curriculum delivery. Program 2 of the department is curriculum policy, supporting and monitoring. And when we look at it, at set indicators on monitoring and supporting the implementation of national curriculum statement, one notes that the targets are on reading norms and incremental introduction to African languages, but none on the monitoring curriculum coverage. Chair, the ANC will continue to promote the objectives of the NDR to unite all South Africans behind a vision of a non-racial, non-sexist, democratic and prosperous South Africa. Father of our nation, Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela once said, and I quote, "Massive poverty and absence inequality are such terrible scourges of our times that they have to rank alongside slavery and apartheid as social ills," quote closed. Inequality and poverty in our education system, coupled with geographic trap that determine that children would achieve better if they are in a particular area, remain a challenge. We are proud that the ANC has introduced many initiatives to deal with the redress in education system. But Chair, inequality and poverty are becoming a determinant of efficiency and quality. The patterns of migration are teaching us these lessons. Continued calls at them that educational achievement among South African children is strongly associated with their socio-economic status. This can change. Tackling dropout rate is also a responsibility we have to address urgently. The above challenges call for improved quality of teaching and learning through various support, including sustained teacher provisioning, development and support provisioning, and learning and teaching support materials. The third approach to this budget is to respond to the call for the skills revolution as mandated in the ANC manifesto. Chair, the ANC government needs to use this budget to quantify the costs and implement measures to address redundancy of our children. Fellow South Africans, if truth be told, we cannot boldly tackle the current challenges in our education system without interrogating the painful past that stereotyped education to deny our people the required skills. Education not only provides children and families with a pathway out of poverty, but it can also yield even bigger returns for the world's poorest countries. The ANC manifesto calls that doors of learning should be open to all by focusing on quality and innovation to equip young South Africans for the world of tomorrow. The demands of the fourth industrial revolution have a great potential of misplacing our children if they are not well equipped. Education must play a significant role in responding to the call for more and decent jobs. Education should also be challenged to contribute in the reduction of employment rate that is currently sitting at 27%. The announcement that we need to strengthen technical and vocational streams is welcome. The call by the NDP that the different parts of education system should work together, allowing learners to take different pathways, that other high quality learning opportunities should be fully supported. Considering tight financial constraints, we encourage the department to come up with a plan within the system, and that plan should be supported, resourced, and be executed well. The prime to this should be to expand the scope of the schools of skills, which currently are skewed only to the favor of the Western Cape province. We are also concerned that some universities are playing frustrating games with some learners who recently passed their grade 12 with some of this subject. We encourage speedy dialogue between the Department of Basic Education and higher education institutions to create seamless articulation for our learners. Universities must not frustrate learners on this matter by not accepting them into their program. The committee has been assured that priority in this budget would be to develop materials for new technology subject and specialization, including technical mathematics and technical sciences, monitoring the training of teachers in technical subjects, and developing other guides in support. We are happy, Chair, that the various plans are underway to respond to the demand of the fourth industrial revolution. The department has indicated that in line with the framework for skills and changing world, the preparatory work for the training for educators and learners to respond to emerging technologies, including Internet of Things, coding and artificial intelligence is well underway. I would like to emphasize the fact that, of course, try as it might, government on its own cannot achieve our nation's educational goals. We need to harness the energies and resources of the whole nation. It is precisely for this reason that we cannot repeat too often our appreciation of the role and business, progressive non-governmental organization and community organization in the transformation of education.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
The support of the everybody.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Honourable Manchester, can take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Participation of our teachers and school management in the TALIS report has been a good benchmark for our education system against the best in the world, and like all research, it goes South Africans talking. This report illustrates what we already know. Actually, the large number of these issues within that report are understated. You see, Chair, South Africa has two types of education system, one in poverty and one in financial stability. 80% of our learners attend dysfunctional schools, where a family member might never see their child again because the violence between learners can escalate to death, where drugs and alcohol move freely into school premises because of gangs in the area or a tavern which is 100 meters away, where children may never safely arrive at school because of the condition of their transport, where a child has no chair to sit on because members of the community vandalize the school, attend school with no school facilities to keep them free of outside influence and peer pressure. These are the daily realities of many learners in this country. To no surprise, the department's Program 5, which seeks to promote social cohesion, safety, and implementing of school sports, spent a mere 7.1 million per year, which means the department spends 788 rands per province, 500 rand per school to monitor and support a school within this program. This is not a commitment, Minister, it is a shame. Sporting facilities are non-existent in the majority of schools. The Department of Sports has a miserable budget, but yet it is expected to give support to schools. Adjustments must be made, because within that budget of basic education, there's no clear-cut allocation for violence. We need clarity, Minister, because within the system, we lost many learners. We lost Kulani Matebula. We lost Daniel Bagwela. We lost Phyllis Sitembile. We lost Odile Mafora. We lost David Matlape. We lost Madan Mutlamme. All these learners were between the age of 9 and 19 years old, and they were all killed by their peers from the same school or nearby schools. How long must this list be for you to understand that you have a crisis as school minister? These learners will never finish their matric. They will never go to university to obtain a job, get married, have children. They will never experience the fourth industrial revolution, which this government fondly talks about all the time. What is disappointing is that even the president paid no attention to school violence in Botswana speeches this year, which means the ANC government shows no interest in the safety of our learners or does not believe it is a crisis. Minister, we need a holistic approach. We need to be preemptive and preventative measures. And the Democratic Alliance, we have 5 things we could do to combat violence in schools. Every provincial department should establish a safe schools call center. I've been talking about this for years now, in all provinces, so that communities can immediately report and get advice on violence, bullying, gangs, and drug use. This has been very useful in the Western Capes, and learners in other provinces need a similar resource. We need support of after-school programs to keep learners occupied, safe, and socially engaged, like what we are doing in the Western Cape with the after-school game changer. We need serious, Mamelani, we need serious collaboration across the department. The Department of Justice, Health, Social Development, and SAPS. Ensure that every school
Honorable member, can you hold for a minute?
Make sure I get my time, please. I lost-
Honorable member, I would discourage you from communicating directly with the honorable
How
members.
did I do?
You better address me.
Okay, it was 54 seconds.
No, your time
point
is
of order,
taken into
Chairperson.
consideration.
Okay,
Order, honorable members. What's your point of order, honorable member?
Chair, she never mentioned anybody's name. So she never talked directly to anybody.
Honorable member. Order, honorable members. Honorable member, if a point of order is made and I am of the discretion that a point of order is going to cause chaos, then I would discourage it. It's your own confession. Honorable member, continue. Order, honorable members. You can continue, honorable members.
we need to ensure that the Department of Education properly trains educators on how to manage class discipline without resorting to corporal punishment. The Tally survey focused on issues such as vandalism, violence, and bullying, which happens frequently in South Africa and infrequent in the OECD countries. The study fell short when it comes to arson, because just 2 days after the release of the report, a school was burned down. This will be an outlier in the report. Most countries have never experienced members of society burning schools, not even in the rest of Africa. Chairperson, burning of a school is unheard of, unless you live in a war-torn country. So if I may ask, who do we blame? It's not the 1976 learners who protested against Afrikaans because they never banned any schools. It's not the 1988 learners, but it is the learners from this very system who actually go out and ban our schools. And this is an affront. This is an affront, and it is criminal, and it should be treated as such.
Honorable member.
It is.
Honorable Nobo from the IFT. Continue, honorable member. It was a mistake. It's EFF.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, the EFF and its leadership. Education is a basic necessity for everyone's development, self-actualization, and dignity, in particular for a black child. The demand for a well-capacitated basic education system that is decolonized, Afrocentric, is at the heart of self-love. What we have now is an excuse for basic education. At the core of education, in particular basic education, is the need to develop and advance indigenous knowledge to achieve sovereignty and economic freedom. Any education that is not based on this clear principle will only subject this and many generations to condemnation of being cheap and easily accessible labor, to economic, cultural, recreational life, which they are not meaningful participants, but spectators. This is why early childhood education is central to the foundation of education towards economic freedom and total sovereignty to production of African knowledge, goods, and services. We must make ECD compulsory and ensure universal provision of ECD programs. Making ECD compulsory and universally accessible is the first step. The second step is to move towards development of curriculum which focuses on nutrition, book reading, storytelling, and other land-based activities. Children must understand not only is the land theirs, but it is linked with the economy, cultural participation, and all forms of life. All ECD practitioners must be employed on a full-time basis with full pay and pension contribution by government. The treatment of ECD practitioners, who many are women and are unpaid volunteers, do not receive any form of training or recognition for the important work they do. This is a clear demonstration of how unserious you are with the future of the black child, Minister. The Department of Basic Education must train more ECD practitioners. Let's agree on a target of 40,000 ECD practitioners, whom 50% should be women and youth by 2021. We can also agree as Parliament that the department should submit a comprehensive and clear plan on how they will be training these practitioners. This proposal must be submitted by the end of September 2019. Minister, we need to move towards one education system as a country. All learners should fall under one school system, and all matric learners must write the same examination. So we don't want IEB. Some of us who went through IEB know that we are privileged by virtue of going through IEB. So it's important, Minister, that we make sure that we do not create a parallel education system. Our brothers and sisters in the township must be able to enjoy the same benefits as those kids who are in white schools. How do you continue with the colonial and apartheid education system that entrenches inequality in our society? How do you tolerate a system that does not educate but systematically keeps the economy in the hands of white minority? While we are moving towards one education system as a country, in the immediate, we must uproot racism and sexism in all private schools. In fact, we need a commission of inquiry into the admission, language, and dress code of all private schools. No school should be having only white learners. They must be forced to enroll black, colored, and Indian learners, subsidize those who cannot afford, and ensure that the school's environment is a representation of South African demographics. But also, we must do away with the nonsense of using Afrikaans as a tool to discriminate against black people in former white-only schools. We must confront this devil head-on, deal with it now, so in future our children do not deal with this nonsense. Basic education is the foundation phase of making of a learning being, in which it is of utmost importance that a learner must find themselves in the knowledge that they engage with. But as it stands, the syllabus is alienating. It shouts out to the learner that their appearance in the world is not adequate. And this is seen through the use of schools' code of conduct, which polices that the ways in which the learners appear at school is not warranted, is not wanted. So the ways in which they engage with language, the ways in which they are expected to be in the school, the ways in which they are expected to participate, they have to twang. They are expected to cut their hair. So it's important that we make sure that the hairstyles, ways of speaking, and ultimately ways of being in the school is African and Afrocentric in nature. Let's also agree to educate the 2020, let's also agree that by 2020, teachers are properly trained and are professionalized. Let's make sure that teachers matter. Let's make sure that we take care of all the needs of the teachers, so that teachers don't go to school to teach with the stress that they have of not being able to teach in the schools that they are deployed. It is a shame that this government built soccer stadiums for 2010 World Cup worth billions in a few years. Yet you are unable to do away with pit toilets for 25 years. 2014, the World Cup was announced. Within 6 years, you were able to build complex stadiums. But for 25 years, 2014, there was an announcement of the World Cup in South Africa, if you did not know. In 2010, we had the tournament. But for 25 years, you were unable to build toilets for schools.
Your time is up,
Pil-
Honorable Member.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Honorable Nobo from the IFP.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Minister, while we rise to this podium to dissect what is wrong and to commend what is right within the budget of this department, the reality of violence in our schools outside of this chamber is frightening. Our school children are being killed, our teachers are threatened and intimidated, and both our teachers and learners face the harshest conditions that no educator, professional, and learner should ever face. Not only are some of our schools unable to meet the required norms and standards set out by the department, the conditions in these schools are wholly inadequate for teaching and learning to take place. On the scourge of violence, I decide not to go through a list of the victims in the name of the learners and teachers. It is tragic, it is worrying, and it must be swiftly addressed. These elements cannot reside within our classrooms. It must be rooted out, and this department should act now before it is too late. One death in our schools is one too many. Honorable Minister, through you, Chair, the quality of our education has over the years deteriorated significantly, not because we do not know how to teach and learn, but because the administration has tried to please themselves and their own statistics. It is hard to believe when we read external reports on the shocking levels of numeracy and literacy in our classrooms. What is even harder to believe is that we lower the bar to pass these learners who cannot read nor write. It's not good enough to do this. To pass learners who cannot do the basics, we cannot pass over what we do not want to address. The buck stops with you, Honorable Minister. We are letting down the generations that come after us. Chairperson, yes, we are all aware of the unfortunate socio-economic factors which are at play in our country and which affect our schools too, but it is the role of this department to ensure that the policy and practice meets despite some of the realities at home, around the classroom, and in communities. Things such as asbestos classrooms, pit toilets or latrines, dilapidated classrooms with non-functioning laboratory equipment. In some places, there aren't even labs available, and just the basics to function. These things should be things of the past. We can't roll out coding if we don't have the technology in most classes to do so. This would simply mean that the playing field will remain unequal for the black child living in rural community, but has an above average mathematics and technology ability, when tech classrooms doesn't exist in most places. Let's work together to ensure that we prioritize those who have been left out for too long. We must deal with inequality, and it starts within our educational system. Minister, the IFP pleads with you to fix what is broken within the ECD system. Unpaid and exploited teachers and poor facilities for learners are not the way to go if we want to go forward. Furthermore, the department must ensure, for instance, that scholar transport is reliable, is safe, and is available, in particular in rural communities. Learners cannot be expected to wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning to start walking to reach the classrooms. National policies and programs which are able to be adopted by provincial departments of education must be monitored. We cannot have policies in provincial administrations which are against that of the department and in some instances, the Constitution. Minister, we are aware of the task at hand. It's not easy, but your time in office has been long enough that we cannot say there has been no continuity and no leadership. All we want, Minister, is better for our children and better for our country. Therefore, the IFP supports the budget. I thank you.
Honorable Boshoff from FF Plus.
Honorable Minister and Honorable Chairperson, first, it's actually a welcome sight to see you in your office again, because those of us who have been in teaching during the era between 1994 and when you assumed office, knew that with each new minister, we got a new curriculum, and that teaching and education in general was in a very unstable state at that stage, because actually nobody exactly knew what to do and what were expected of them. You systematically returned stability, and although we may differ on many important aspects, at least one can say that in education people more or less know what is expected of them. That is to say, when we work with professional teachers. Now, there is an artificial distinction which people make between education for qualification for the economy and education as a forming activity. That, of course, is a false distinction, because even the most forming educational exercise also generates the characteristics which are necessary for economic success, and the other way around. Now, that is where decolonization in education is a key factor, because in a colonial thinking, there is a metropolis with one or more dependent countries or colonies. In the subjugated colonial mind, the metropolis is London, Lisbon, New York, or Beijing. That is the center of the world, where my place is regarded as a distant corner of the globe. Of course, that is not, that is to limit oneself in a colonial mindset. A decolonized worldview, on the other hand, is one in which my place, wherever exactly that may be, is the center of my world. Decolonization is taking responsibility for your own world, even though others may see that place as a distant corner of the world. Now, decolonizing education has everything to do with economic success, because the decolonized mind integrates him or herself with science and the world of knowledge, with which is confronted in the world of work, and can interact with that in a very direct way. South African education, however, is still sadly colonized. It is increasingly, and I'm very glad about what you told us today about the development of African language and the guarantee of mother tongue education. But until now, South African education is increasingly offered in only one language, in English. And it's not always legitimate to say that Afrikaans is used as a way of exclusion. Where I come from in the Northern Cape, there's no way in which you can exclude anybody with Afrikaans, because everybody speaks Afrikaans. In addition, our teachers don't regard themselves as professionals, but as part of a proletariat which organizes itself in trade unions, which get tough with its employer to the detriment of learners. And that's one of the main problems, that our unprofessional teachers who go on strikes because they organize themselves in a trade union and not in a professional body like doctors or lawyers or whoever would, start with a tug of war against the state in which our children are the suffering parties. Now, Honourable Chair, it's Mr. Chair at the moment, I don't know what happens at my back, and Honourable Minister, Afrikaans children are colonized by subjecting them to a narrative in which their own past is only occasionally mentioned and then consequently to vilify them. The responsibility for education originates with communities and should also be delivered by community structures. If some communities may decide to delegate this responsibility to the state, either national or provincial, it creates no duty on others to follow suit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The Deputy Minister. Oh, you are late. Deputy Minister.
House Chair, thank you very much for this opportunity. Cabinet Ministers, Deputy Ministers who are present, honorable members, MECs from provinces, distinguished guests, stakeholders from the Department of Education. Chair, in the next 2 days, the whole world will commemorate our outstanding son, a true visionary, the father of democracy, an icon that the world continues to cherish, the first democratic president of the Republic, Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. As this happens, we are required to volunteer time and energy in a manner that will grow South Africa. In our context, we are expected to intensify education delivery to emancipate the people of South Africa from poverty, unemployment, and inequality. The Mandela Month takes place at the backdrop of the Youth Month, which accorded South Africans to commemorate 43 years of brave action of the class of 1976, who were inspired by the Freedom Charter's injunction that the doors of learning and culture shall be opened to all. This generation, honorable members, held a dream of a South Africa that is free, democratic, and at peace with itself. It is this generation that organized itself as the Congress of the South African Students, COSAS, who celebrates 40 years of existence this year, espoused by their mantra, each one, teach one. The institutional mechanism at the time labeled this great generation of ours crazy, and history has judged them harshly. Today, we are proud to see the dream of these young lions came to fruition. Chairperson, our government, in the course of continuous assessment, sanctioned departments to undertake a 25-year review of progress made. The review, which is available at the Department of Performance Monitoring and Evaluation, reflected on trends in educational outcomes, among which are the following: access to education, efficiency in school progression, quality of learning, and equity in educational outcomes. This shows a huge movement from where South Africa was before 1994 and where she is in 2018. Honorable Chairperson and members, the President of the Republic, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, made a commitment in his State of the Nation address in June 2019, was that of a capable state. Within the basic education sector, this translates into ensuring that all levels of basic education delivery are functional, efficient, and of impeccable quality. Chair and members, fellow South Africans, efforts of improving the quality of teaching and the status of the teaching profession will be intensified. Teachers will be empowered and equipped with skills, knowledge, and techniques for a changing world, with a strong focus of foundational skills. We have started. The quality and kind of teachers which are produced cannot be overemphasized enough, since they are instrumental in producing the kind of learners the country requires. The department is therefore working closely with the Department of Higher Education, Science and Technology, as well as the Education Deans Forum, to improve the quality of initial teacher education programs. The current process of revising the policy on the minimum requirement for teacher education qualifications in line with the new development in global and local context will enhance effectiveness and efficiency in the development and delivery of initial teacher education programs. The revised policy will recognize the need for teacher education to consider emerging priorities such as digitization, 21st century skills, and imperatives related to the fourth industrial revolution. The National Development Plan requires that basic education sector to strengthen and expand the Funza Lushaka bursary program to attract young students into the teaching profession. During this current financial year, Chairperson, more than 13,000 bursaries have been awarded to student teachers who are 30 years of age or younger to register for the initial teacher education program at universities. Collectively, more than 5,000 young people have been recruited from the no-fee schools and disadvantaged communities who have registered to study at universities across the country since the introduction of the district-based teacher recruitment program. Chair, a solid foundation for mathematics in the foundation phase is crucial. Training of foundation phase subject advisors on a year-long course with universities remains a priority. The current European Union funding is only benefiting 200 foundation phase advisors in 2 districts and only in 1 province for the cost of 8 million. Chairperson, plans are being finalized by both departments, the Department of Basic Education as well as Department of Social Development, in support of the systematic and phased-in relocation of the responsibility and leadership for early childhood development from social development to basic education in response to President Ramaphosa's injunction during the February and the June State of the Nation addresses. The main purpose of the ECD relocation is to expand access and improve the quality of ECD programs in support of 2 years of compulsory grade R for all children before they enter grade 1, as well as provision of ECD for 0 to 4 years old children. A costed plan for the ECD function shift will be finalized by March 2020. The department, in collaboration with UNICEF and Cortlands, with funding from the Lego Foundation, embarked on an in-service training program to capacitate 150,000 practitioners and at foundation phase education in play-based learning, pedagogies, and practice over a 3-year period. So it's impossible when we have such a training to train teachers in 6 months. Honorable Chair, through the care and support for teaching and learning programs, the department seeks to provide a basket of support services to remove barriers to learning. Our children face many challenges such as poverty, violence, lack of shelter, care and protection, health challenges, mental health, teenage pregnancy, HIV and AIDS, drug and substance abuse. The list is long, and it shows that South Africans are concerned about this. These conditions have a direct impact on their ability to access school, to stay in school, and to achieve to the full potential. Given some of the pressing and spiraling social ills in society, it has become increasingly critical for the department to double the efforts in providing a psychosocial support services in the sector. Schools are a microcosm of society. It is then logical that schools will exhibit the challenges that exist in the society. That's why on issues of violence, issues of school safety, we cannot, as members of the society, put it to education alone, because this is a societal matter. It needs a joint effort by all of us, because what is happening in the societies is translated into schools and migrated to schools. So we cannot put a blame to schools and say, Minister, do this in schools, yet we experience that and even worse in societies. We need to work together with sectors of societies to bring back the degenerated morals in our societies. A conducive learning environment is a necessary prerequisite to achieving quality and efficient basic education. Among other things, the training and placement of child and youth care workers through partnership with social development provinces and NGOs are critical. We continue to explore additional models and capacity with the support of the National Education Collaboration Trust. HIV and TB are now regarded as a chronic disease that have reached epidemic proportion in South Africa. The department is therefore intends on strengthening its program in this regard. Chairperson, we all say education is everybody's business. Education is not for critiques, because some of the critiques become even professional, and you find somebody being a professional social critique. And such people cannot bring any substantive, progressive ideas. Theirs is to criticize and criticize and criticize. Chairperson, the department is receiving support from the Mutsipe Foundation to the value of 117.5 million rands. This partnership seeks to encourage participation in sports and cultural activities which are integral to the holistic development of a learner as indicated in the National Development Plan. The three key focal programs are school football, netball, and the choral estate fort. Schools are where talent is identified, career choices are made, and habits are learned. We remain committed to the National Development Plan Vision 2020 of making learners more conscious of the things they have in common rather than their differences. The department sets aside funds to implement the following social cohesion and equity programs: National School Moot Courts, Inkosi Albert Lutuli Oral History Program, and evaluation of textbooks, which intends to identify areas that depict discrimination, stereotypes, sexism, and cultural discrepancies and misrepresentation contained in textbooks. Honorable members, by the end of 2019, the department commits to, among others, support the provision of school health services to 200,000 learners in grade 1, 4, 8, and 10, including the human papillomavirus vaccine program for grade 5. We will print and distribute more than 500,000 educator guides and learner books on sexuality, education, scripted lesson plans for grade 4 to 6 and 10 to 12 in 1,000 schools. We'll also host a workshop on the restorative conferencing and physical assaults response towards violence prevention to improve competencies on violence prevention in the sector. Chairperson, on the issue of infrastructure, by the end of this financial year, we'll complete the construction of 40 schools and to deliver sanitation to 775 schools and water to 225 schools. The number of schools to be provided with sanitation includes 606 schools to be provided through the SAFE initiative, which is implemented in partnership with the private sector. Those who are not critics, but when they see a need, they come closer and assist. and also sister departments such as Department of Water and Sanitation, as well as Environmental Affairs and entities such as Development Bank of Southern Africa. School infrastructure, Chair, provision remains a contentious matter that requires agility, innovation for effective delivery to accelerate the achievement that have already been registered. In order to beef up capacity at national level, we have already appointed a chief quantity surveyor and an engineer. We are in the process of appointing 2 more chief quantity surveyors and a chief project manager for school infrastructure. Chair, as I close, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity and thank the Minister of the Department of Basic Education for the good work that she's doing, and Team Education. I also, Minister, want to appreciate that my aunt is sitting up there. She said she wants to come to Parliament, and she's here today, Aunt Saram Kibam Haule. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Honorable speakers from ACDP.
Honorable Chair, we extend our best wishes to the Minister in a new position. Honorable Minister, it is our concern that despite the best intentions of government, that this education budget is throwing good money into a failed system. According to the World Economic Forum, South Africa scored second to last for quality of Africa's education systems. Most of our learners cannot read with comprehension, and children finishing school who do not gain university entry or entry to other tertiary institutions are doomed to take employment that limits their ability to be self-sustaining or live a prosperous life. Our system do not render the outcome South Africa needs. That is, more learners pursuing careers in areas critical to our economy. It is imperative for us to fast-track programs that will enhance learners' numeracy and abstract reasoning abilities. The ACDP is calling for a change to the education system, to one like the Cambridge system, proven to be most effective in turning out well-rounded and educated learners. In addition, we are calling on government to increase the amount of skill schools that train learners in skills functions fit for purpose. Surely, we need to attend to this with urgency, as it affects the most vulnerable of our children. Right now, as we are debating in this House, we are losing young men and women to the drug economy. We need integrated solutions in order to increase retaining learners in school. A learner stimulated and in school is less prone to fall victim to the lure of drugs. The current plan of the department to revise life orientation and introduce comprehensive sexual education from grade 4 is not only morally repulsive, but it is an imposition by the state on the role of parents. The greatest gift we give the world is our children, and the greatest gift we give our children is education. For this nation to raise world-class leaders and give the world more Nelson Mandelas, we cannot morally paralyze them. Our children should be taught our values as Africans. We cannot sell confusion and moral retardation and hope for an upright, well-adjusted generation. Most of us in these walls have been inspired to high ideals by great teachers. Honorable Minister and this House, we need to therefore ensure that we inspire a new generation of teachers as we seek to transform the education sector. And I thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is
Honorable House Chairperson, our Honorable Minister, Madam Njimutseka, and all protocol observed. 25 years since the ushering of our democratic dispensation, 2 days before the special day, the day
of the celebration of the internationally celebrated icon Tata Rolihlahla Nelson Mandela. 23 years since the adoption of the most and groundbreaking constitution, which legally entered the basic human rights of all people, we can but only look back with a smile how the ANC-led government turned the tide in adopting and passing the most progressive and the life-touching policies and legislation for the advancement of equal and quality basic education. The Freedom Charter could not have been more relevant. The doors of learning shall be open for all. There shall be free and compulsory education for all. The heinous and inhuman policies once conceived and implemented by the likes of Verwoerd Helle is a thing of yesterday. Verwoerdian expressions such as, there is no place for the Bantu in the European community above the level of certain forms of labor. What is the use of teaching the Bantu child mathematics when it cannot use it in practice? Let me close the quotes. House Chairperson, these are the words of the former Minister of Native Affairs, who later was elevated to be the Prime Minister of the Republic of South Africa between 1958 and 1966. With all this said and done, this mini plenary must be told it is one thing for us gathered here to formulate and pass laws at the level, but it's another thing to implement them. As we all marched towards the promulgated date of our provincial and national elections, all political formations cut across the length and breadth of our country, we promised South Africans heaven and earth based on our election manifestos. Our approach on how we are going to deliver on the basic education to the South African child was no different. Section 29, subsection 1 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, as amended in 1996, provides that everyone has got the right to education, including adult education. This is the same constitution that legislated that all people are equal and thus have equal rights, including that to fundamental education. Any form of discrimination by it on the grounds of race, gender, sex orientation, and language, you name them, is completely prohibited and therefore prosecutable by law. It is against this background that inclusive education becomes a right to every citizen and not a privilege. Having gone through all your election manifestos, I can conclusively say we are incongruent in as far as the provision of basic education is concerned. Why we should come and differ here, I find it sinister and really unacceptable. Policies underpinning such successful delivery of our quality basic education will inter alia reflect the following. The language vis-a-vis the admission policy. We may come to this house with all form of negativisms, selfish and defense mechanism, yet the truth remains, nothing can substitute the importance of and the value of mother tongue in the education of our children. South African schools test will attest to that. The policy on school safety. I've heard many people talk about it, but Honorable Chair to this House, the Portfolio Committee on Basic Education in our engagement with the Minister was never oblivious of the perennial violence and the killings that ravage our schools. We admitted is a fact, but the bottom line remains education remains a societal matter. And if we have to defeat that monster, we must all join hands and stop criticizing one party at the expense of the other. We agree that the death of one teacher, the death of one teacher is one too many. And for this reason, and the death of one child is one too many. To the Minister, let me say, you have walked the walk.
Your time is up, Honorable Member.
Thank you very much. We accept and we endorse this budget book.
Honorable Subisi from NFP.
Honorable House Chair, Honorable Minister and Deputy Minister, honorable members, fellow South Africans, I greet you all. The National Freedom Party welcomes and supports the budget report on basic education. The NFP supports the 7.8% budget increase. We also support the sector planning priorities in support of improved reading and learning outcomes through the ECD function shift, early grade reading, ICTs in education, assessment, violence and social cohesion in schools, and SAFE initiative. Honorable House Chair, our primary and secondary education institutions are in need of constant attention, improvement, and innovative development. However, the increase of violence within our school is a cause for serious attention. House Chair, we have seen on social media platforms the gruesome attacks involving both learners on learner and learners on educators. We have to admit that our schools have become places of violence, and educators together with students do not feel safe anymore. Schools situated in impoverished areas suffer from poor school infrastructure, placing educators and learners' lives in danger. We as the NFP note the project plans for practical completion of 15 inappropriate schools and 41 sanitation projects by September 2019, and we support these initiatives. We note the Minister remind members that in respect of the infrastructure grant, the monies were transferred directly to PEDs. The NFP supports the Minister in seeking new necessary resources to carry out some of the functions required. We need to look into the overcrowding of classrooms. Till this day, we have one educator with the responsibility of teaching 40 to 60 students in a classroom. Subjects such as mathematics and physical science, which require special attention, which educators are unable to give these students. Honorable House Chair, the reality is that we have brilliant students with special gifts, but it will not be discovered due to this. In respect of the National School Nutrition Program, the struggle for environmental justice to address shortage of nutritious food to feed needy learners remains valid, and that school nutrition programs, if managed properly, can make a crucial contribution in this regard. Ikakhulukazi kubantwana besuka emakhaya, abanye ibasiza kakhulu ukudla okutholakala ezikolweni ngoba kunamakhaya la osuke uqonda khona ukuthi uzofika umfundi ekhaya elale engadlile. Sifisa ukuncoma nokubonga umnyango ngale program enhle abayenzela izwe lakithi eSouth Africa.
Up, honorable member. Thank you. Honorable Nchaisa from AIC.
Yeah, that's correct. You're correct. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Let me start off by congratulating the Nombulelo Senior School in Makanda on their outstanding achievement in music competition. The Department of Basic Education Annual Performance Plan aligns itself with, among other things, the National Development Plan, that is NTP, the Green Paper for Post-School Education and Training, and the Mid-Term Strategic Framework 2014-2019. It is also inspired by the President Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address. The NTP envisages that by 2013, South Africans should have all access to education and training of the highest quality, leading to significantly improved learning outcomes. The achievement of improved learning outcomes has a bearing on how learners post-education phase perform in the immediate future. Our education system is the bedrock of the country's economic development. Honorable Chair, there are urgent challenges we need to attend to. We say as AIC that the rationalization of schools policy is unworkable. The make-aside schools do not always address the structural socio-economic issues that affect our learners. As an alternative, we said we'll revamp MAD schools, properly equip them and attract competent staff complement. We also should provide teachers now with proper incentives so that now they'll be in a position to do their work with great interest. There's a bold emphasis that we need to have accreditation exit classes at the end of each phase in high school. In this way, now we'll be in a position to document learners that leave education system before grade 12. We also make it the point that school transport and school nutrition are looked into properly. Of course, we do appreciate now the allocation that has been made to school nutrition. At least now they would assist the learners that come from the poor families. Honorable Chair, there is admission by the department that as a result of budget cuts for the provincial education, compliance to the norms and standards for school infrastructure will likely not to be achieved. This is very much regrettable. Honorable Chair and Honorable Minister, there are still schools that are withholding the reports of learners who do support the budget and report. Thank you very much.
Honorable Van der Walt from the DA.
Chairperson, I dedicate my speech today to every learner who is still taught in an unsafe school building and schools without water and sanitation facilities after years of promises during SONA, SOPA and budget vote speeches. Coding and tablets won't make a difference to the learners who have died doing something as simple as using a toilet. In 2007, the 6-year-old Siamtanda Mtundu died after the walls of a toilet collapsed on him. In 2013, 7-year-old Lister Magongwa died after the walls of a toilet collapsed on him. In January 2014, 5-year-old Michael Kumapi died after drowning in a dilapidated pit toilet. In 2018, 5-year-old Lumka Mketwa died after drowning in a pit toilet. In 2019, the warning lights are still not seen as the Eastern Cape Department spends 4.8 million rand on 9 uncompleted pit latrines. It amounts to 533,000 rand per toilet. The latest NIMS report still paints a very bleak picture, with Limpopo still having 2,524 schools with pit latrines. The Eastern Cape has 1,945 and KZN 2,607. Why was there a difference on statistics in the NIMS report and the rapid audit report from the department to the President? The Limpopo Department of Education in February 2014 announced that the initial budget of 997 million rand would see the eradication of the bucket and pit toilets in 868 schools by the end of 2014. I quote Putisa Loba, "I can put my head on the block and say that all the outstanding toilets will be delivered before the end of 2014. We just need our people to be patient with us." Close quote. Well, 5 years, 5 months later, our people are still waiting. Toilette is egter nie die enigste infrastruktuurrisiko nie. Op 1 Februarie vanjaar sterf Royden Olkers, Jan Dreestein, Marley Curry en Magnus Nagel nadat 'n loopbrug by Hoërskool Driehoek in Vanderbijlpark ineenstort. Die tragedie moes as 'n ernstige waarskuwing dien om inspeksies by al ons skole te doen en te verseker dat die strukturele integriteit van alle klaskamers, geboue, loopgange en brûe aan die aanvaarbare standaarde soos uiteengesit in wetgewing voldoen. Some solutions. Reverse the massive budget cut to school infrastructure. 7.2 billion was cut and is coming returned to us in an unacceptable rate of drips.
Honorable member, can you take your seat? Somebody.
Thank you. Can the member take a question, please?
Honorable member, are you prepared to take a question? No.
Afterwards, I'll give you 2 days. The massive bailouts paid to save Eskom, SAA and Denel because of corruption is morally questionable, whilst the lives of our children and teachers are placed at risk every day at unsafe schools. Treasury should implement proper monitoring systems on all conditional funds, and departments should blacklist and stop using dodgy middlemen and implementing agents. Chair, learners should not pass their nearest school. In South Africa, every learner should be educated by qualified teachers at a school which is properly built, safe, with dignified sanitation, water, electricity, and equipped laboratories and libraries, sporting facilities. We owe it to our children.
Thank you. The next speaker is from the ANC, Honorable N.G. Adjournment.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, Honorable Minister of Basic Education, Honorable Deputy Minister, Honorable members in the House, the official led by the DG, all guests, ladies and gentlemen, principals, teachers, parents and learners, fellow South Africans, good afternoon, molweni dumelang. Let me appreciate the opportunity given to me to participate in this debate. The debate in which is recognizing many accomplishments by the ANC-led government. The government deliberately and consciously declared improved quality basic education as top priority. It therefore calls on all of us to make an extraordinary effort so that this objective is realized for the benefit of all the children in our country. The ANC support the budget, vote number 14. We cannot and we must not fail to ensure that we harness our collective energies to deliver on this important assignment. Setswana sa bo rona se re, mabogo dinku a thebana. We welcome the development that we have noted with the work of the Ministry of Basic Education to date. It is important to acknowledge that despite many challenges that still exist, the system has continued to show signs of improvement. Qhubeka mbokodo, uyibambe uye phambili, uvale indlebe uye phambili, malibongwe. The provision of infrastructure remains one of the major challenges in rural areas. The ANC manifesto urges for improvement of quality teaching, learning and eradication of illiteracy in the school system. These priorities have fundamentally informed our radical programs for educational transformation. President Cyril Ramaphosa, in his State of the Nation address, committed government to improving infrastructure in schools in order to create conducive environment for teaching and learning. He indicated that accelerated school infrastructure delivery initiative, best known as ASIDI, is part of the National Infrastructure Plan. He furthermore stated that the National Infrastructure Development Program continues to be the key job driver and the analyst for economic growth in our country. School infrastructure backlog program have been allocated 40.4 billion, of which constitute 51.4% of its total budget. In the midterm budget, for the further replacement of unsafe school, as well as to address challenges of shortages of water, electricity, and sanitation. There's a lot of progress that has been made in the 2018-2019 financial year from the provincial programs, from the provincial program funded through the Education Infrastructure Grant and the Equitable Share. Amongst others are the total number of teaching spaces that were established, about 3,661. 1,155 maintenance projects that were completed, 205 disaster projects completed, water, sanitation, electricity, fencing, sports facilities, and boarding schools amongst some of them. 2 full service schools and 2 special schools were also provided. The sector has provided a total of 66 new and replacement schools in respective provinces. On the accelerated school infrastructure delivery, ASIDI, 222 new schools have been replaced in appropriate structures, including mud schools. 795 schools provided with sanitation and 935 with water. Siyaqhuba thina siyaphambili. You can make noises if you want to. The mandate is to improve school infrastructure, is derived from outcome 1 of the government's medium-term strategy framework, which commits government to invest in school infrastructure. Honorable Chair, the education infrastructure grant has been allocated to provinces and will be highly monitored by the department to ensure that all schools meet the minimum norms and standards of the infrastructure. Chair, as the ANC, we support and welcome the budget, and we acknowledge that it is, in essence, inadequate to address the historical backlogs of the period of prior 1994. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Hendricks from Al-Jama.
Honorable Chair, Honorable Minister, education and violence at schools and rotten food given to learners and undignified sanitation in schools is not a societal matter, not after 25 years. It is a matter for the 6th Parliament to solve once and for all. Learners at schools in the 10 crime hotspots on the Cape Flats must as a priority be 100% safe at their schools. You can't, Honourable Minister, leave everything to the police and the army. For the next 3 months, Minister must have a parallel process. Minister, Al-Jama supports a budget vote on basic education. With that said, learners under the Progressive Student Movement with 100,000 learners on their database, through their conference in June, adopted a solution document which questions the effectiveness of the equitable share formula in redressing the disparities in most rural provinces. The learners believe that the 3% weighting given to poverty component is insufficient. I want to acknowledge the presence of Kabalo Nkizo, President of the Progressive Students Movement, in the gallery. He was elected at a conference in Bullemhof in June by delegates representing 100,000 learners. He attended Marang Primary School in Jakkelsdans, a deep rural village school in Northwest, where the Honourable Boshoff also comes from. It is the poorest primary school in the Northwest Province. Al-Jama regards PSM as the learner command of South Africa. They have a solution for violence in schools. Honorary Minister, make time for them. Al-Jama also wants to make the point that the 3% is not helping rural schools. Help by increasing the weighting for poverty component in your budget by having on the radar not 3%, 60% in the spirit of Mandela Day. But let's start with 0.76%. That will help you honor President Mandela on Thursday. Please adjust the budget if you can. Al-Jama also wants students in madrasas memorizing the Quran by heart to help learners with their multiplication tables, as many cannot multiply 3 times 3 at the age of 10. When I campaigned for votes, I tested these students in Mitchell's Plain and abandoned the campaign for the day, and my team helped them memorize their tables. So we have a lot of challenges in the Western Cape besides the violence, but it is unacceptable that students, learners who are reaching the age of 12 can't read and write, and they can't multiply. So we have a real challenge for this Parliament. But we support the budget, and good luck, Honourable Minister.
Thank you. The Honourable King.
Chairperson, Honourable Minister, it is high time that our education does more to create opportunities for learners with disabilities to access their education with dignity. The DA believe that every child must get the opportunity to reach their full potential. 3,856 special needs learners wrote the NSC exam in 2018, and 2/3 of these learners are from the Western Cape, making up 2,471 learners. This prompted the Basic Education Portfolio Committee in March this year to conduct oversight to Vukani Special Care Center in Khayelitsha, Ikaya Care and Support House in Khayelitsha, and the Hyder Special Care in Claremont. Minister, it is clear that where the DA governs, special needs learners have more access to education. Why is it then, Minister, that other provinces have a lethargic approach when it comes to special needs education? Human Rights Watch estimated in 2018 that there were 600,000 children with disabilities not attending school in South Africa. The working group protocol mentioned by the President in Isona will not solve this problem. 600,000 kids don't have time to wait around for discussion papers and summits. Coding and tablets won't make a difference to a special needs learner who are not in school, Minister. The implementation of White Paper 6 has been slow. White Paper 6 was first introduced in 2001, and 17 years later, there's not been much progress in the implementation of the inclusive education system. So, Mr. President and Minister, for how long must we watch this space? The implementation of this policy is hampered by the lack of teacher skills and the knowledge in differentiating the curriculum to address a wide range of learning needs, and schools to screen, identify, assess, and support learners. Despite the fact that universal access to education is enshrined in national legislation, thousands of learners with disabilities remain locked out of opportunities to realize their right to access education. The ANC's government chronic underfunding for special need facilities is placing massive financial constraint on parents who must pay school fees and hostel fees. This is aggravated by the fact that many special schools are not classified as no-fee schools. Currently, the condition in special needs schools don't meet the standards set out in guidelines as required by White Paper 6. As an example, Sikao Special School in Flagstaff has appalling and deteriorating conditions due to failing infrastructure, a health and security risk for learners whose basic human rights are violated on a daily basis, Minister. Minister, it is time that the national government put its money where its mouth is, and you can do this, Minister. Allocating funding to establish more purpose-built, professionally staffed schools for learners with special needs. Strengthening special needs to ensure that they act as resource centers and support the entire inclusive education system by offering training on curriculum differentiation, assessment, and instruction, and improving the already existing facilities to bring them in line with the inclusive education approach. Be bold enough, Minister,
to ensure that provincial education departments spend conditional grants earmarked for special needs on special needs facilities. Remember, you said this to us, that you are not certain about what the provincial departments are doing with it.
Your time is up.
Quoting the words of late President Mandela, please.
Your time is up. Honorable Malachi from the ANC.
Honorable members, I think before I even start my speech, it's very important that I remind the National Party reborn as DA. That is very important that they understand that.
On a point of order, Chair.
Honorable member, can you take a seat?
Can the
Honorable members. What is the point of order, honorable
Can
member?
the honorable member stop misleading this house and get his point ready?
Honorable
It's
Chair.
a point of debate.
Honorable
That's not
Chair.
a point of order, honorable
Chair.
member.
Chair.
You can continue.
Chair. We want to remind the DA that it's his maiden speech, so he must not be interrupted. Thank you very much.
Honorable members. Honorable members. Please.
Thank you very much, Honorable Two-Piece. Now, it is very important that we understand that it's very important that we understand that the African
Honorable-
National Conference.
Honorable member.
Honorable Chair.
Honorable member Malash. Honorable members, please. Honorable members, please. Honorable Malach. I refer you to a rule that says, let us respect each other.
Please.
Let us call each other in respectable terms. I humbly request you to observe that. Could you please, Honorable Malatsi, withdraw the name, what is it? The honorable piece or whatever that you said.
I withdraw, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much, sir.
Chairperson.
Order, honorable members.
Chairperson.
Honorable members, please.
Chairperson, it is very important that we must understand that the African National Conference, when it was elected into power in 1994, it had a very big responsibility.
Honorable members, you are drowning the speaker. Honorable member,
Speaker, you're saving my time.
No, it's fine. Just honorable members. Honorable members. Honorable members. Honorable members. You are drowning the speaker. Could you please allow him? Honorable members, if you continue this way, you would have no alternative but to take another direction. Yes. Honorable members, could you please allow a speaker on the podium to continue? If you have an objection or a point of order, you are allowed to raise your hand and make your point of order. But unnecessary interjections disrupt the smooth running of the House. Please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairperson. It is very important that we understand that in 1994, the African National Congress, when it was elected into power by the majority of South Africans, had a big responsibility to try to address the injustices of the past. We know very well that in the past, education and infrastructure of education was only preserved for a few minority that had fear of the majority being educated. We know very well that the issue of the violence in schools, the issue of the violence in our communities, you cannot separate it from the inequalities that we are faced with as a country. Because the biggest issue that we are faced with of inequalities has forced our parents to wake up in the early hours of the morning to go and sell their labor to a ruling class and come back late at night without parenting their kids. Now, a lot of families are led by children. Now, child-headed families are bound to produce mental ill kids. Now, we cannot say we cannot bring it to the illegals of apartheid. I was expecting honorable members from the DA, when they come to the frontier, the first thing they'll do is to apologize for the injustice of the past and say, let's work together to address them. Honorable members, honorable member of the EFF, it is very important that I will not spend much of my time addressing what you have said, because what you have done best is to remind us of our own resolutions. What you have contributed here, some of the issues lack scientific direction. Now, it is very important that we educate you a bit, because it is our fault that when we were recruiting other learners into Congress African students, we forgot to recruit you. We apologize. Now, honorable members, it is very important that we understand that the issue of private schools.
Point of order, Chairperson. Chairperson, I'm waiting for the lesson. I hope that it will teach me something. In the years that I've known you, I've always been teaching you. So I wait for you to give me something.
Honorable Member Palmer, there's no point of order there. Continue, Honorable Member.
Honorable Chair, just to still at the issue of the EFF, on the issue of privatization of private schools, it is very clear that we need to join hands and unite to resolve this issue, because we have seen that when others were leaving, going to Australia, living with our money after we took democracy, members of DA, some of them remained in the country, and than them investing in public schools, they decided to create their own private schools because they don't want to be seen to be associated with the poor black majority. Now, if they could bring back the money from Australia to invest in our schools, we'll resolve many of our contradictions.
Honorable members.
Comrades from the IFP. Honorables from the IFP. Honorables from the IFP. We fully agree that the issue of violence is a big issue. But we must not forget one important issue, because whenever we deal with such issues, we need to be reminded of our own history. It is during the black-on-black wars that a lot of guns were remaining in our townships. It's during the black-on-black wars that a lot of parents were killed in our townships. Now, we need to join hands to educate even the members, even the voters that vote for the IFP, that it is not only through violence that we resolve contradictions. Now, the issue of violence is not only the responsibility of the ANC, but it's the responsibility of the whole country, because our violence are from our communities.
On a point of order.
ACTP.
Honorable Malachi, can you take a seat, please? Why are you rising, Honorable Member?
Will the member take a question?
Honorable Malachi, do take a question.
No, I will invite you to political school, not now.
Honorable members. Honorable members. And Malachi. Dada Malachi. Honorable Malachi.
Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Can you take a seat? There's a point of order.
Oh.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask a question. I would like to ask the member a question.
Honorable Malachi, would you take a question?
No.
It doesn't want to. Thank you very much, Honorable Member. You can sit. Honorable members.
Thank you very much, Honorable. I expected the Honorable on my left to be agreeing with me, because he's also affected by the injustice of the past. Now, Honorable members, it is very important. It is very important that we agree that we need a curriculum change that will introduce history as being a compulsory subject, because through history we'll be able to educate our people of where they are from. Honorable members, history is important because it assists to decolonize the present generation of the past. When you are asked a question as a young person, when a young person of Cuba is asked a question, what is your role as a citizen of Cuba? They'll tell you to protect socialism at the highest cost. But when you ask a South African, what is your role as South African? They will not be able to tell you that is to make sure that you build a non-racial, non-sexist, prosperous society. Now, it's a community that we need to build. Now, we need to join hands to make sure that we fight to conscientize our society, to fight against prefects that we have on our left. The African National Congress, through the speech of the president, has committed that is going to, as a way of contributing to make sure they're not left behind, we're going to introduce specialized schools. Now, ICT is one of the subjects that we need to move on. The African National Congress must advance the courses program of One Learner, One iPad as a nationwide program. Honorable members, this can be done through a special curriculum that will allow learners the freedom to develop expertise in their chosen areas of specialization, with an increased emphasis on special projects and new contact of coding and robotics. Honorable members, one of the biggest things that we need to introduce in our schools to try to resolve the issue of violence, it is very important that we introduce each and every school must have psychologists.
Order, honorable members.
Honorable members, as the African National Congress, we are against the damage to properties by protesters. We fail to understand these corrupt toy soldiers. When they protest against service delivery issues, they see it very important to ban our schools and libraries. We must unite against the new culture of thuggery that is manufactured to reverse the progress made by the People's Movement, the African National Congress, funded by agents of regime change here on the left. Honorable members, it is very important that we understand very well that we never came here to Parliament to make noise and howl. Our responsibility in this multi-party democracy is to make sure that each and every party that is given a certain percentage in Parliament is to assist, to contribute to building this country. It does not assist to come to Parliament to wear two pieces and overalls and not contribute on anything.
Chairperson,
Honorable Malati, can you take a
can we
seat,
assist you,
please?
my brother? I think you can adjust yourself so that we can hear you. You are howling. You are howling.
Honorable
Just
member, that's
adjust.
not a
Just
point
adjust.
of order.
Adjust, Chief. Just adjust.
Honorable Chair.
Just adjust.
That's not a point of order.
Honorable Chair.
Honorable Debo.
Thank you, Chair. I think let's allow Honorable Malaji to finish with this volume because he those ones can't hear.
I will
So
take
he's
care of
assisting
that,
there.
Honorable John. I will take care of that.
Honorable members, Thomas Sankara once said, an unconscious soldier is a potential criminal. The mistake that was made by people on the left, they rush to come to Parliament before they are conscientized of their responsibilities. Now the dangers of sending criminals to Parliament, they will not know the importance of us working together. They think the responsibility is to make noise and howl. Honorable members, it is very important that we raise this important issue. The TA here on our left, knowing very well that our progressive forces, which are the Cuban forces, that have assisted us to attain this freedom, they have blocked each and every avenue for every black child there in the Western Cape to go and study medicine in Cuba because they think that Cuba is associated with revolution. Now this TA here, at least we can see them that the leopard does not change its colors. Does not change its spots. Even if you try to use varnish on them, they'll never change their spots. They've got their spots of the National Party.
Malati, can you take a seat? Honorable members, can you listen to an honorable member posing a question? Or
Chair, I'm raising on
interjecting?
Rule 84. Honorable member here is busy directing fingers, gestures, and utters. Can you please refrain from me? I'm not talking to you. Can you please listen?
Honorable Chair. Honorable member.
Honorable Chair.
Can I assist? While Rule 84 considers the unparliamentary language and gestures, the gesture that Honorable Malati has made is not provocative. So it's not unparliamentary. Continue, Honorable Member.
Honorable members, as part of nation building, honorable members. Honorable members, as part of nation building, it is very important that this nation building is not seen to be made by only those who were oppressed in the past. It is very important that, Honorable Minister, we introduce a central system of teacher application so that all teachers apply in the same area, in the same place. Then we can have those who are refusing to go and teach in our township. We can move Honorable Farmer here to go and teach there in Kukuletu and see the kind of conditions that have subjected our people into. It is very important also, honorable members, that we rename our schools. We rename our schools after African freedom fighters. Because gone are those days where we have war school here in South Africa. The child of Verwoerd must be able to write a matric exam in the Ephraim Mukhali High School, so that they understand very well that it's very important that they understand other languages. It is very important, honorable members, that it becomes compulsory for each and every school to at least have one African language, original African language, to be taught here in South Africa. So that we don't have a situation where by 200 years later, we still have Honorable Verwoerd who can't even speak one African language, but he's saying he's been here for over the years in South African. It is very important also, honorable members, that it's very important that, honorable members, we understand very well that the issue of nation building cannot only be left to African National Congress, but it must be a process that we all work into and we join hands to support each other.
Honorable Member. Your time is up.
I support the budget vote.
Order, honorable members. Honorable members, order. Honorable members, order. Can I draw your attention to the following? Honorable members, interjections in the House are allowed, but not to the extent that they should be disruptive, and one cannot hear what the speaker is saying. I want to remind you that you are not representing yourself as a member of parliament, but you are representing a constituency that is listening and watching at you. So please, in the manner in which we do our things, can we do our things respectfully so that there's progress in the House? I am talking to all members of this House. Thank you very much. I now call upon the Honorable, the Minister of Basic Education.
No, thank you very much, Chair, and also let me thank members for the debate and for the inputs that we received from different members. There are a few things that I wanted to really also raise, which members have raised around infrastructure, that indeed we believe that the infrastructure, the provision and maintenance of infrastructure needs attention, and that's why we have developed a program to revisit the current model. We're working with Treasury and other service providers like the DBSA to make sure that we can revamp and improve our performance in that area. Also, during this year, we've agreed that we'll revamp the National Education Infrastructure Management System, which is NIMS, and we're working on that with the Council of Scientific Industrial Research with a review of redesigning our schools and also make sure that they continue to be appropriate with the changing needs in the curriculum. There were also points which were raised around learners with special needs, and I did mention that we have been provided with resources for the first time as a DBE to really look at the capacity of the sector in dealing with learners with severe and profound intellectual disabilities, and we'll be monitoring the capacity of provinces. And before I close, Chair, I want to take this opportunity indeed to thank honorable members for the debate, the chairperson of the committee and the committee, my former colleague, Mr. Envasetti, with whom we had started some of the programs, and also my current colleague, Dr. Muhaule, and also express my appreciation, as I said, to the chairperson, members of the select committee, the whips, but also the department in particular, the HOD and our officials. But I'm also immensely grateful to our learners who are the core of our business, our teachers and our teacher unions that work very well with us, our principal, parents and learners, and school governing bodies that continue to make our schools work. But I also want to thank the other partners in the sector, your SAIS, your ELRC, your NECT, and the EDTP sector. Chair, whilst I still have the 2 minutes, I just want to say a few things around, just to remind each other, I guess in the next 5 years we'll find each other, that this debate is not a sector debate. The sector itself has a total budget of 256 billion, 281 billion, and 256 get transferred to provinces. In addition to the 34 billion we're talking about, 18.6 billion also goes to provinces. So that when you talk about, so that because then it's difficult to engage, because people talk about things we're not talking about, others bring their moral values to say, I mean, your moral, whether it's Muslim or Christian, it's yours. We're not talking about morals of different people and different parties. We're talking about what is on the budget and not any other things. And unfortunately, I think my colleagues from the left have expected more. We've been together in the sector, I thought they understand the concurrency. So it's not taking into the concurrency of functions, that some of the things they're raising about perhaps they're happening in province. That's why you need to have representation elsewhere, because I can't be reporting on what is happening elsewhere where the function is located. It's not a sector debate, it's not a sector budget. And therefore, let's talk so that I can really appreciate that you understand. Because the sense is that I will understand what happens. So,
Order, honorable
people are
members.
going all over. And also using the platform to really also be an
Honorable
NCOP,
members,
where
can you
every
please
time
give the
Western
minister
Cape, comrades
chance?
from the DA speaks, it's about Western Cape. This is not the NCOP. We're not comparing provinces here. So if you want other matters about province, let's go to the NCOP. Then we can tell you which province functions, which one doesn't function. So to opportunistically select what you want to say about Western Cape and say Western Cape, you want to compare to the nation, then you have a problem. It's the problem of the little mouse DA comparing itself to the elephant. So I think you take that thing politically to here. That you compare the national department to the province of the Western Cape and want us all the time to be speaking about Western Cape as if it's national. It's not national. And the other point I really want to say, Chair, now that I'm going to close, the DA likes being the bearers of bad news. So if there's a crisis in the nation, there's violence, they jump around as if everybody's celebrating violence. It is a concern. We're all concerned about violence in schools. We should not raise it as if it's something that we can. So you like celebrating certain things, and we are confronting
Thank you
it,
very much,
and you seem to
Honorable
love it.
Minister.
That's why there are soldiers there.
Thank you very much.
They should kill you first.
Honorable members, honorable members, honorable members, honorable members, honorable members, that fortunately at long last concludes the debate and the business of the mini plenary session. The mini plenary will now rise.